Well, folks, here we are. BONELAB is finally in our hands, and I've taken around a week to play and really digest Stress Level Zero's latest creation. I'm talking about new guns, gadgets, and gameplay mechanics, and all of it's being serenaded by the sweet jams of none other than Michael Wyckoff himself. Within its first weeks of launch, BONELAB has proven to be quite the acquired taste for the community, with reports of bugs, sluggish load times, confusion regarding the story, and other grievances. On the other side of the spectrum, many people are having a fantastic time, and the modding community has already whipped up some pretty wicked stuff.
I come to make an announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker.
As for my experience, I'll give my honest thoughts on the game later, because for now, I'll be putting together some of the smaller pieces of world building scattered throughout the game. If you've seen my previous video on BONEWORKS, you'll understand some of the information I might be referring to throughout this video. Before we begin, I want to take a moment and thank each and every one of you fine folks that checked out my first video. Seriously, the support I received was absolutely mind-boggling, and it means a great deal to me. As always, be sure to give me some feedback on them likes and dislikes, and subscribe and hit that bell to be in the know on my future uploads. With all of that expository hoopla out the way, let's get into this. We begin our adventure at the end of a noose after being sentenced to death for consorting with outside powers, a grave sin for one living in the simulated Puritan society of Heaven's Reach. And it's all owned and operated by our favorite fictional monopoly, Monogon Industries. You heard me correctly. The company decided to go a step further with their virtual endeavors by creating a whole-ass medieval life simulation, complete with villages filled with sentient artificial peasants with their own rules of civilization. And here I was thinking that playing God was looked down upon by most people, but I guess not. I mean, we barely deserve the authority that we got with My Sims Kingdom. Anyways, the village of Heaven's Reach exists in a small section of Fantasyland, which is the title of the simulation itself. It is entirely separate from the MythOS city experience, implying that Monogon has a wider range of vastly different programs up their sleeves, ranging from medieval roleplay worlds to metropolitan living environments.
Hey. Oh, what up, son? What up, son? You just got monkey bumped.
But since they're all totally different themes and settings, there's no way for them to clash and interact with each other, right? Well, as it turns out, Monogon has a network of utility tunnels and infrastructure underneath the landscape of Fantasyland that employees use to supply the villagers with their material needs, whether it be prefabricated houses or just simple blacksmithing tools. Furthermore, these tunnels serve as an alternative route into MythOS, leading back into the various districts of the city. So it all seems pretty simple at the moment. Monogon is running a D&D VR server that has back doors leading into their mainline servers. However, if you remember from BONEWORKS, there was a mysterious faction that goes by the name of Lava Gang, which claimed to be responsible for the melon belly epidemic, in which the Nomen workers began to ferment melons with void energy, corrupting themselves and disrupting the workflow of the entire city. It appears that Lava Gang is involved in much more than just meddling with melons, taking on a more prominent role in BONELAB. Later on in the game, we learn that Monogon actually ends up abandoning the Fantasyland project altogether, instead shifting their focus to other simulations, all while leaving the AI of Heaven's Reach to fend for themselves. With nothing else to do but endlessly wander their empty simulation, a few AI managed to stumble upon some vacant Monogon posts where inside they would learn the truth about their reality. They had all indeed been forsaken and left behind. A blistering hatred swept over the entirety of Heaven's Reach, and its people soon rejected everything related to the company and its practices. And watching it all unfold from within the void was Lava Gang. During the player's dive into the underbelly of Fantasyland, the presence of this Lava Gang is made abundantly clear, whether it be through graffiti or the various clipboards laying around in the story levels. In my first video, I briefly mentioned my speculations about the role of Lava Gang and BONELAB just a little while before the game was released, and it seems like I was actually onto something. So let's start with the group's origin. From what I've gathered, Lava Gang was originally this group of disgruntled Fantasyland developers and employees that banded together to create their own version of Fantasyland, using data smuggled out of the development team. The goal was to create their own simulation where they could test and build things freely without limitation or fear of Monogon's intervention. Furthermore, they want the creators to be at the forefront, with them all directly contributing to an eclectic virtual future, rather than maintaining the banal corporate scope of Monogon. Not only did developers participate, but people from other professions joined Lava Gang as well, such as trash handlers. In one clipboard, we can see 2 trash handler employees talking about how tired they are of cleaning up all the Fantasyland garbage, and how they'd much rather cleanse it all with lava and build their own stuff for a change. Kinda like the birth of Lava Gang as a concept. You would think that the reason Monogon ditched the whole Fantasyland idea was because of all these people fucking with their stuff. But what if I told you that Monogon left because the people of Heaven's Reach were never supposed to be self-aware and fully sentient? They didn't just drop the project due to some strange controversies within the company. They left because they lost control of the situation and it was no longer profitable for any of them. Heaven's Reach had become the subject of a study shortly after it was discovered that the AI was gaining sentience and beginning to learn about the world around them. They antagonized and condemned Monogon after the Grand Elder, the leader of the society, learned of the experiments going on underneath the surface. It was nothing short of witchcraft in their eyes, and so they demonized all of Monogon, including the staff working behind the scenes in Fantasyland. Due to this drastic change in ideology, the villagers stopped using the various wishing wells that Monogon operated, where employees would send up anything the people requested. This shift in behavior didn't sit right with the supervisor of one of these wishing wells, namely Lift Crew 06. The rest of the crew seemed to enjoy their positions acting as providers for this peaceful little medieval community, even despite their now bitter attitude towards Monogon. In fact, an employee actually went out of their way to submit ethical concerns about the well-being of the villagers, prompting some displeasure from management. But the supervisor of Lift Crew 06 felt personally betrayed by the village, and in his frustration, decided to start an experiment of his own. The crew was now going to be replacing simple instruments, like a hatchet, with much more violent and dangerous counterparts, like a double-bladed gladiator axe. The initial idea was to subliminally introduce the population to violence, but in order to expedite the process, the supervisor requisitioned an immense amount of modern firearms to put in the villagers' hands, flooding the underground storage areas with assets that aren't even fantasy themed. Now let's look at this situation from Monogon's eyes. Your product is pretty much screwed at this point. The NPCs are self-aware, they now despise you with zealous fury, somebody is giving them guns, and the developers you hired are double-crossing you by stealing data for a group that's been causing you trouble from before opening day. I can kinda understand why Monogon rage quit here. This wasn't the best situation for them. A free-thinking society of anti-Monogon people is prime Lava Gang material, and us, the player, are the top candidate. At the end of the first level, we board a simulation exit elevator that's supposed to be taking us up into District 06 of MythOS City, which is the district of virtual sciences. But instead of going up, Lava Gang sends our elevator tumbling down the shaft in a freefall. crashing down through the ceiling of an underground laboratory. This is the BONELAB, a top-secret project area for experimental work and testing. Down here, Monaghan is completely hands-off, unable to interfere with any of the work being done. As a player, you spend a lot of time here since it acts as a hub world between game modes like Sandbox or Tac Trial. But I'm actually going to be talking about the area next to the lab spa. In here, a very familiar office space sits in the middle of an empty pool, save for some liquid void material at the bottom. Entering inside this hunk of concrete, we can immediately recognize this as the Fantasyland dev office from BONEWORKS. But how did it get here, and more importantly, why is it here? Well, ever since the BONEWORKS security incident where Arthur Ford escaped into the Voidway, Monaghan had been cracking down on surveillance, monitoring every employee nearly constantly. In order to avoid their watchful eye, the Fantasyland devs hatched a plan to move their office in District 06 to the lab spa by using the Boss Claw, the big floating gravity crane that picks geometry garbage up off the streets for recycling. They used it to rip the entire office out of the concrete development, and I'm assuming they were able to instance warp the whole thing into the lab spa from there. Another way they stayed under the radar was through the use of the body log, a gadget that allowed the user to change into any avatar they want with physical stats to match instantly. By using this, the team could blend into any environment. Out and about in the streets, turn into a null entity. Adventuring through Fantasyland, turn into a skeleton. Nobody is any the wiser. You could be tall, short, thin, fat. It's all possible. Not only is this gadget strictly against Monaghan's policies, it also appears to have been supplied in part by Gammon, the same company that was on the USB stick that Ford used in BONEWORKS. For a while, the dev team in Lava Gang's doings went undetected, but eventually Monaghan's security caught wind of what was going on, and the entire team flushed everything they were working on, and I mean they literally flushed it down the lab spa drains. However, the things they flushed are very peculiar, and here's where my ideas might seem a little strange, but hear me out. You see this fractured tablet? This is the hexabody configuration that details how the physics of the player's body works in-game. I believe that this tablet is actually a physical copy of all those mechanics and data, despite being a museum exhibit asset. So it makes sense as to why the Fantasyland devs are using it. It's literally how the bones work, serving as the base of the simulation that they're building. There are numerous other physical forms of flush data that can be found in the tract of the sewer system. These are also tablets detailing how the simulation interacts with the Voidway in order to function. Think of it like the 10 Commandments of MythOS. There's a lot of information on each one of them, so if you folks in the audience would be interested in a video all about the tablets, let me know down in the comments. As you move along through the sewers, you encounter a bunch of omniprojectors, which act as a cleanup crew for MythOS. They are supplied by Saber Lake, a security contracting company that specializes in containing Voidway anomalies and cryptids. Surrounding some of those tablets we mentioned, these big chrome blobs seem to be breaking out, which struck me as somewhat familiar during my first playthrough. It's like in BONEWORKS with the Apollo that has the super shiny metal. It was marked as anomalous. It seems that Saber Lake is investigating the sewers. They could be gathering some of the flush data and cleaning up the anomalous geometry left behind, while also searching for the Fantasyland devs. But something tells me they'll never truly find any of them, because they aren't in MythOS anymore. They've ascended. Throughout the player's journey, a voice continuously reaches out to you from over the airwaves, speaking to you through the radios. The voice belongs to Jimmy Wong, a radio host for 98.6 Dead FM and Lava Gang member. We've actually seen him before in BONEWORKS. You can see him by peering through this crack in the redacted chamber. During the story, he tells us that we need to ascend, that we need to become more than just a player, and through the campaign, we do just that. We escape Fantasyland, discover the BONELAB, and find Jimmy Wong himself. Once we do, he gives us the body log and shows us how it works. Now equipped with Lava Gang's special gadget, we're finally ready to ascend and join the rest of the Fantasyland crew in the Voidway. That's right, with Jimmy's help, we're able to ascend and access the Voidway, having learned the truth about our existence. Once there, Jimmy explains that there's something maleficent lurking within the void, something that was already there. Lava Gang believed that they needed an army, but Jimmy believes that they need creators, people willing to defy Monogon and push the limits of the simulation. He explains that by creating more and more things, our minds become more intertwined within the Voidway itself, and with more people's minds connected, the better of a chance they stand against whatever's dwelling out there. He then drives off in his void taxi, looking for the next person to ferry into this part of the Voidway. And this is the point in time when you realize that BONELAB, the video game you've been playing, is the project that Lava Gang created.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
This is what all of their work was for. You can play this game looking any way you want thanks to the body log. You also get the immersive physics of the Marrow engine, and you can mod this game to your heart's content.
Pick up that can.
Creators now have a VR platform where anything becomes truly possible. Now I'm gonna be, what the fuck? Oh, ew, y'all do not want to be in that district. Hold on, let me pull you back. There we go. I almost pan-seared your neurons there for a second. My bad, y'all. Now I'm just gonna quickly list off some things that I noticed that are cool, but not cool enough to spend 30 minutes explaining. Number 1, there's a symbol on the back of the monolith in the first level that also appears on the back of every employee ID card. Number 2, the cube in the main menu has a lot of curious machinery attached to the bottom of it, alongside the buttload of graffiti. Apparently this thing is like the physical server for an entire city block. Very cool indeed. Number 3, the cultist hoods look a lot like the void prism that formed under the system clock in BONEWORKS. Number 4, a whiteboard mentions that food tastes different in different avatars. On the same board, CRISPR snacks are mentioned again, which I covered in my previous video. Looking back, I think the snacks might have actually been hinting at the avatar stat system. Number 5, in the museum basement sandbox, you can venture deeper into the level to find an office space that belongs to someone named Chris, a Lava Gang member who had taken a position as archival staff for Monogon. He's the one responsible for breaking the museum tablets down and sneaking them into the BONELAB for their project. His name is also in graffiti around the game. And finally, number 6, this skeleton in Drop Pit shits himself after you kill him. Now that you've listened to all my abysmal narration and nonsensical speculations, let me give you my honest opinion of BONELAB. First and foremost, this game isn't perfect. I've seen plenty of reviews that praise this game as an incredibly worthy successor to BONEWORKS, when in my opinion, it doesn't really hold a flame to it. Don't get me wrong, I had a wonderful time playing this game, and there were moments where I felt the same childlike wonder as the first title, but the flaws and jank are just very prevalent in normal gameplay. The BONEWORKS aesthetic is still intact, however, it was obvious that in order to make this game work on both the Quest 2 and PC VR, sacrifices had to be made. Instead of having large, open story levels with plenty of exploration, Stress Level 0 had to narrow the scope, making use of more linear levels and simpler puzzles. Furthermore, some of the levels just aren't that enjoyable to play the first time around, like the moon level and the pillar. Thankfully, at the time of recording this audio, a patch has come out that alleviates those exact worries I just mentioned. The pillar ordeal was made a bit more difficult due to the glitchy grabbing of the Valve Index controllers, and the grab points on certain weapons are just super finicky. Overall, the story was really short and confusing upon first playthrough. But I can say that going back through the game over and over again to take a closer look was an awesome experience. Even though the game turned out a little different than I had imagined, I'm not angry at Quest users for any of it. I'm not mad at the developers for any of it. I paid full price for both Fallout 76 and Halo Infinite on their launch days. Nothing disappoints me anymore. I'm just a little disheartened that Quest users didn't get to experience BONEWORKS in quite the same way that I experienced BONEWORKS. But it's all good. because what we do have is the single most advanced physics sandbox game available at the moment, and we're just getting started. So let's give Mr. Brandon and the rest of Stress Level Zero a virtual round of applause. The modding community has made spectacular use of the new avatar system, and custom maps are already looking great. I'm just hoping that Stress Level Zero continues to update this game alongside the community so that we can all innovate this platform together. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion about this game. I'd also love to hear about your experiences and discoveries with BONELAB down in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to see what I cook up next. It's about that time for me, y'all. I'm out of here. I'll be cutting it up with you in the next video.